going to can some chicken stew. And so this is going to be a little bit longer process than we normally go through. Now I have got everything prepped, potatoes peeled and carrots chopped up and onions chopped up and a lot of stuff like that. Pre-cooked the chicken and have it cubed up. And so we are going to do I've got to saute some onions, and typically whenever I do a recipe for canning, I would not use butter. But since I'm doing 14 quarts today and only using a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half of butter to saute onions and my celery, then I am going to use just a little bit of butter because it's not enough to make any difference. So we're going to get into this canning right now. Now you can see here behind me, I have got some, let me adjust that so you can see what I'm doing. I've got my butter here. Now you'll notice here that I've still got some onions over here, and that's because I want some large chunks of onion in my stew. But I've got some here that are diced up that I'm going to saute because that gives that extra flavor of the onion in the, let me turn that back on. I didn't want my butter to burn. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this onion in here. Y'all can see I'm using my hands. God made hands before he made spoons. And then I've got a little bit, now I am using some rehydrated celery here this morning. Not a whole lot of celery. I don't want to overpower the flavor in this, but I did want to put just a little bit of celery in it. Celery's it's a strong flavor, so y'all know how that is. I want just a little bit, but not overpowering. I went ahead and measured out my seasonings. Now I do want to say this. And those of you who have been with me for a while, you know this. I add seasonings to the recipe based on my personal taste. So I've got some thyme. I chose to use some dehydrated garlic in this instead of fresh minced garlic. You can do either way. I could have, sprinkled that minced garlic, just sprinkled it around in this and sauteed it. It would have been just fine. But I'm going to add it to the broth in my stock pot in a few minutes. And then I've got some large chunks of onions here and my carrots. And then over here in some water, I've got my potatoes. Now I'm using the Yukon Gold potatoes in this. You can see that I've already chunked up my chicken, and I've put about a third full in the jars. The reason that I did that instead of going ahead and adding it back to the broth is because when you're spooning the soup into your jars, it's hard to get an even amount of vegetables and meat. So I put about I fill my jar about a third of the way up with the meat, and then I'll add the broth and the vegetables over it. Well, what's the difference between chicken soup and chicken stew? Okay, so chicken soup has a whole lot more broth in it, whereas chicken stew will have a lot less broth and a whole lot more of the vegetables. Now, another thing that you're going to notice today that I am putting in this particular recipe, I'm putting green peas in it. Now, if I were doing this in June or July, I'd probably put some Blue Lake beans, green beans in it. I am using frozen green peas today. You can use frozen green beans if you want to. So either way that you want to do that is fine. Now, my onions are about to get done here. Let me see if I can get this camera set back so that you can see here what I'm doing. And of course, the butter is pretty much all absorbed now. Turn that down. And the onions are about tender. And so what I'm going to do, I've got the broth already on the burner and getting it warm. And so I'm going to go ahead and mix all this stuff into it. And you can see here, I've got a bag of green peas already open. I'm going to go ahead, let me flip this around here so you can see here. You can see I've just got broth in my stock pot right now. And so, you know, all I'm going to do is add all of my vegetables and seasonings into that stock pot. I'm going to let it simmer probably at least 30 minutes. Then I'm just going to spoon that stuff over top of my pre-cooked chicken. Now that chicken is not cooked all the way through. Y'all have seen me do that before. And also I want to show y'all, the ones of you that are new. Let me grab this. You can see here that I have a little coffee filter. It's a you know, one of the coffee filters that you can use for, I don't know what brand it is, but anyway, whenever I'm doing the broth, you have to strain it. And what I do, let me see here, I get my little, this thing right here, I put that in the top of it, and I put this in a jar, and then pour the broth where I've cooked the chicken into it, and it strains all of the mess off of it till you've got a good clear broth. And so if you're doing, you know, a whole lot of chicken, you can can your broth too. Now today I'm not going to be doing that. In fact, I may add some broth to it since I'm doing 14 quarts. But and I started with 8 pounds of chicken. So if that'll give you a good idea of, you know, where you're starting if you want to do 14 quarts. And then I did peel 5 pounds of potatoes. For you all that are new to this, go back and look at the meat recipes, at the meat canning videos. Anytime you are canning a meat in a recipe, if you're canning pints, you're going to can it, process it in the pressure canner for 75 minutes. If you are canning quarts, you're always going to do at least 90 minutes. If you have any questions, I'm always online at least once or twice a day to look for questions in my message box. And so you send me your questions and I will answer to the best of my ability. So y'all have a wonderful, blessed day, and I hope you enjoy canning some chicken stew.